Thank you, everyone, for attending this evening. I'm going to read a statement. The qualifications of the members of the commission, the staff of the commission, and any consultants used are on file with the town and are hereby made part of each and every application heard tonight. The guidelines and procedures adopted by the commission are also made part of each and every application. Each application heard tonight is considered on its own merits and is not to be considered as establishing a precedent for any other application. The Historic District Design Guidelines have been adopted by the town of Sykesville in accordance with Article 6B 8.06a of the Maryland Code and follow the recommendations of the United States Secretary of the Interior. The Sykesville Historic District Commission follows Robert's Rules of Order with the exception that the chairperson votes. Okay, mind bringing up the agenda? All right, so this evening we're going to have to kind of change the order of the agenda items. We're missing one of the attendees. So let's start with the meeting minutes from June 28th, 2023. Have you guys had an opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yes. Is there any questions regarding those minutes?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Okay, next agenda item 2 is minutes from July 26, 2023. Same thing. Have you guys had a chance to look at them?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think I was here on
Did you want
July
to hear?
26th.
I wasn't here either.
I don't think I was.
Well, I guess we can.
So you can still vote on it. You're voting that is the record of the minutes.
Okay,
That is the record of the meeting.
that's fine.
Yeah, I did review them.
All right, let's make a motion that these minutes are approved upon further review of other people that were here attending the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, so we're going to start off this evening with, I'm assuming, is anybody here for the sign?
No, they would not be able to make it tonight.
Okay.
It's actually, yeah, we can jump right to Warfield if you
All
want.
right, we're going to jump right to item number 5, consider, discuss, act on 2023-14 for porch work in Building D and L and Parcel D of the Warfield Complex. I see, Steve, you're online this evening. Are you presenting? You're muted.
I am. Thank you very much. We're waiting for Charles Belfour, our architect and historic preservation expert, to join us, but he should be on any minute. I can get started without him, I think. Also joining me tonight is Roger Conley, who many of you know, who is the investor, and then he just dropped off. So, it's funny when you walk into a meeting and you have people behind you and then they disappear. You always get a little nervous, right? Anyway, Roger will be back on, and Charles Belfour, who is a noted expert in historic preservation. He's an architect based out of Westminster, and we brought him on board about 3 years ago because of his expertise and his connections in the contracting world of historic preservation. Is it the staff report going first, or should we go ahead and leap into it?
Is different item.
Okay. Hopefully you all got the photo documentation, and I won't bring things up on the screen unless we really need them. But the work that was done here was isolated to buildings D of L and Parcel D of Warfield at Historic Sykesville. And there were 2 porches on Building D that were collapsing and presenting not only a safety hazard, but we were really also running out of time to preserve what was left for future use. The other porch was on Building L, the north side of Building L, which is the building that's furthest north, facing Springfield Hospital and the State Police Training Center. So that's what the work was isolated to. It's important to note that we that these structures were not demolished. They were dismantled for future use. The work, most of the work on the main, on building D, the largest porch, uncovered, significant rot, and we saved there what we could. There was extensive photo documentation done, and of before, during, and after, in accordance with the Secretary of the Interior standards. And the work was supervised by Charles Belfour, by Edgemont Builders out of Baltimore, who specializes in doing this work. It's also important to note that a small portion of the breezeway in Building L that was collapsing was not dismantled, but was actually just stabilized, and some rot that had occurred was dealt with and removed on that structure. That was a very limited amount of work. Is everybody familiar? Would it be helpful for me to share a diagram, or is everybody familiar from the package with the locations of the work?
Right now, actually, Steve.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Thank you. Again, we decided to perform this work because there were safety concerns, but we were also concerned with, being able to reuse as much as possible down the road when a full plan for the project is adopted. One of the reasons we didn't repair them in place is because we don't know what ultimately the plan is going to look like for Parcel D. That is really up in the air right now. Again, Secretary of the Interior standards were followed. I'll let Charles get a little bit into what that process looks like, if you're interested in it. All the materials were tagged and stored on site in a secure location. And again, down the road, the intention is to reassemble these buildings. And when old materials cannot be used, we will replicate them by going to a mill, or to ensure consistency with the historic look of the buildings. It's really important to note, just big picture, with a project of this size. There's a lot of talk out there about, well, why don't you just reconstruct the entire thing now? We've worked tirelessly since and before closing on this in 2018 to find the capital and the government incentives that were always necessary to make this project a reality. And we're happy with the level of state support we've gotten. We've identified over $30 million in tax credits that once we get the appropriate zoning to allow occupancy of these buildings, our goal is to rehabilitate all the unoccupied structures in one fell swoop. And we're eager to do that in the future. But in the meantime, we're in a position where we will try to preserve failing structures and stabilize them, and when necessary, dismantle and store these structures. One last thing that I'll point out: we've done a substantial amount of work recently to quell break-ins at the property, of which there have been a lot recently. It's always been a problem, but there seems to have been an uptick recently. You may have noticed over there a lot of boarding up that's gone on. We also just finished our annual roof inspections and did about $90,000 worth of work. Not the subject of this application, but lest anybody think that we're not doing everything we can to stave off the deterioration of these buildings until we have a final plan in place. we continue to do this work. I think we have spent the past several months several $100,000 on the boarding, stabilization, and the roofing at the project. With that, if you have any questions of me, happy to answer them, but I think it might be helpful for Charles to run us through very briefly what's involved in dismantling these structures and making sure that they are preserved for future use.
Can we ask a couple of general questions of you? So one of the questions I have is, how come this wasn't brought to the Historic District Commission earlier? Obviously, before the work began. Why is this retrospect? Why are we approving things after they're done? It's usually not the general course of action that we've seen for stabilizations of buildings.
Sure, I understand. And first, let me say, as you know, we are currently in litigation with the town, so I have to I have to be limited in my remarks. I will say that there was some past precedent at Warfield, for what it's worth, that going back several years, probably 2 town managers ago, where a porch was dismantled and stored on the other side of Building D. And unfortunately, back then, that was while the town still owned it, but we had it under contract and we're headed to closing. That all happened without, that work all happened without HDC approval. And unfortunately, the materials that were all saved and cataloged were subsequently discarded by town workers. But we were, in large part, working off that precedent. We understand, talking to Joe, that Joe Cosentini, that you want us to come in the future on things like this. We understand. We hear you loud and clear. And if there's any dismantling required in the future, we will do that. I will also say that we saw this as an emergency. I personally was under that one porch and had part of it come down on me. So that's the best explanation I can give you right now.
So for the future reference, we do have emergency meetings if necessary. So if you do need to contact the HDC in the future for an emergency situation, we would have an emergency meeting, obviously, to go over things. We've done that in the past on other projects. And so we're happy to, have those meetings if it fits our guidelines. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, we heard the current town manager's words loud and clear, and this won't be an issue in the future. That said, I hope you take some comfort in once you hear what Charles has to say, that we've done a good job here preserving these places. Again, I can't emphasize enough that they were not demolished and discarded. They are stored and tagged, and so while I know the preference and the requirement is for us to come in there, I want to assure you that the work that was done out there was done by top-notch professionals and under the supervision of a top-notch architect.
Photographic evidence of where it's being stored for this application?
I didn't note in the application where it's being stored, so we don't have a break-in or anything like that, but it is stored on site. And there was a link in the application to the photographic evidence that showed before, during, and after. There are a few hundred. I think there are a few hundred photos in there, if you dare. But I'll keep that link open if you guys are interested in seeing that.
Is this a condition of your insurance application as well, to have those protected in a building?
The insurance application? No, it's not an insurance issue. It's more of an issue of, I think the preference, as we heard from Charles was, it's always better to store these things on site. If you have a secure place for them, which we feel like we do. It certainly was an insurance issue. We just went through an insurance audit, and I'm glad you brought that up. That, one of the questions we get on these buildings talks about environmental stuff. It talks about break-ins, and it also talks about deteriorating structure. They ask a lot about deteriorating structures, but nothing about where we store things.
Any other questions before Charles? Okay. Charles, you want to go ahead and do a brief description?
You're muted. Yep. Charles, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
All right. The Warfield Historic Guidelines refer to the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabbing buildings, and so that's the course that I took throughout the whole project, not just the porch work, but all the other work that's been done since then to secure the buildings in the complex. And so what I use for my guidelines is Preservation Brief 31, Mothballing Historic Buildings. And that's what I've been using as a guideline for all this work, and also for ongoing maintenance and inspection of the buildings. And one of the things I used was the mothballing checklist, which I think was submitted to the town. And one of the questions in the checklist, it says, have significant architectural elements that have been detached from the building been labeled and stored in a safe place. And so that's the course of action, the lead that I took on the porch, that this could not be repaired in place at this time. So the NPS allows for removal of significant historic elements to be stored and then replaced or repaired at an off-site location. So what happened was the contractor was instructed to take many photographs of the porch, and also at the same time he physically labeled with tape and a coding system all the parts. So he started on the porch from left to right. He labeled each side of the structure A, B, C, etc. And from the bottom to the top, he labeled the individual pieces A1, and then the next level up all the way up to A10, A12, and then left to right within a single side. And he did a diagram of it. So this was used to enable the pieces to be reconstructed accurately. So that was the sort of the formula that we used to label everything before it was removed from the site. So it would be stored, and then when the time came, everything would piece together sort of like a puzzle, instead of just being dumped in one place and sorting through the pieces, trying to match it with a photograph. Although photographs were taken, I took photographs originally in the very beginning of the whole thing, because there's going to be a few places like balusters and things like that that need to be entirely replaced. They're too damaged to repair. So in brief, I used the Secretary of Interior's standards for mothballing historic buildings, that including protecting the windows. And also I submitted a maintenance chart, periodic monthly walkarounds every 3 months with dates for the contractor to go out there and make inspections of the entire complex of all the buildings. And this is an adherence to the National Park Service's brief on mothballing. So there is a precedent there. The NPS does allow removal of historic elements to be stored and repaired at a future date. So that's how I approached the whole project.
Inside the photographic evidence, we're starting to pan through those pictures right now. Is there pictures of it actually being where it's dismantled and being where it is being stored, or is it just in place pictures?
Right now it's in place pictures, but I think there are photos of the thing dismantled in storage. So I'll have to get those from the contractor. The contractor has extensive historic experience, and so he knew that he had to very diligently, label and catalog all the parts. But I can get you more photos of thing disassembled if you'd like.
Yeah,
There may be a few in there. If you scroll to the end, but I'll go back and double check too and coordinate with Charles.
But what would happen is that I would be the lead on actually reconstructing this thing to be on site or wherever it's being repaired to put the whole thing together. It would be my responsibility to make sure everything fits together and also make the decisions on what can be repaired and what has to be replaced. So that when the time comes, that would be my role in the whole process.
Columns and pieces that are being stored.
Yeah, I think that Edgemont Builders did have a whole database listing A1 and all that. They also on each individual element, you can see, I don't know if it's in the photos, but they put blue tape on the each element or each piece and labeled that. And so that corresponds to a list of all the parts.
Anything else you guys have to add?
Only other thing I would say as far as inspections, it's a very good point Charles brings up. We have a property manager, HPS management, that manages both our property owners association and the land condo association that is set up around these historic buildings. They at a minimum inspect twice per month, and I'm out there far more, but and so is Roger. But there are always eyes on it, and on the project. We, again, in addition to just doing regular inspections from the ground and walkthroughs, I think it's really important to note that we, again, water's the enemy here. And so the roofs we are very diligent about, and at least once a year out there repairing those. And I'm happy to report that, we had a very successful set of repairs this time, but it's also very important that it would be nice to get things underway out there and do full-scale preservation on these structures for an overall project as soon as possible. So,
and the one thing I'd like to just to add is that the key document in this that was submitted is the mothballing checklist, which has dates, columns for checking off for particular actions, and so. We're looking at moisture, pests, just basically maintenance, and then also the security. Also being in coordination with the Sykesville Police Department whenever we go on site or when we feel that there's a problem. And then also about the utilities and also the ventilation of the buildings is important too. So I wanted the the board to understand that we're following a specific checklist that's really been formulated by the National Park Service.
A question, so is there anything else in the immediate future or near future of fortifying the building that's on the horizon for us that we should be looking at, like coming down the pipeline? Is saying we're going to need to do repairs on rotted windows or any other areas of the building that we should be thinking about prior to you doing the work?
You know, we've, Lord knows, the past few months, I think we've gotten ourselves caught up on all the major things. The one thing that we're going to try to do that is won't require approval, but might be of interest to you is just we're looking at security cameras and some temporary lighting out there. It's a little bit challenging. It can be a little cost prohibitive, but that's something that we're looking at to further secure things out there. But no, I don't see anything major in the next few months, and we're happy to circle back around to you all after the first of the year if you haven't heard from us before then, just to give you an update on where the structures stand. If you're open to that.
If you do any more work, please come to us first. Obviously, we've already discussed that.
We heard the town manager, and we understand and appreciate that.
No, you filed the application, and on its face, you filed an owner certification and an agent certification that said, among other things, I certify I'm the owner of the above referenced property. I hereby make application to the Town of Sykesville Historic Commission approval of all above referenced changes, and that all the information provided above is correct, and all work will be done in accordance with the Commission's approval. So here we are after the fact. That's just incorrect on its face. As a procedural matter, I don't know. Yeah. I appreciate the dialogue, and you seem very thorough, but I don't know how to approve the application as written.
Yeah, we followed the town manager's instruction on using that form. If we would like to change the language in the form, that's fine. We'll sign a revised certification if that helps.
All right. So what we're saying is we're going to make a modification to this language here. Obviously, given the fact that you guys have already completed the work without approval. So there'll be a rewording of this, and I guess we can reissue it to you for approval, just to make sure you guys are on the same page.
Sure. Yep, that sounds reasonable.
I would like to know is so I'd like to have that database of whatever is being taken out of the building and where it's, obviously you don't have to share it online right now, but where it's being stored for our knowledge, and if there's any other photographic evidence of those columns or other pieces being stored. So if it's not in the photographic documentation right now, if you can provide it to us, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We will follow up with Carrie on that.
So I guess moving forward, we're not going to approve this evening until we have a modification, or should we approve it?
You can approve it subject to that.
All right. So is there a motion to approve it with the modifications noted?
We can go ahead and motion to approve it with the modifications that you've noted.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you all very much. Have a great evening.
Thanks,
everybody.
Okay. Hi. Okay, so we're gonna go backwards right now.
Because that was my punishment for being late.
That's it. So
you were scheduled before that.
I know, and I'm so sorry.
next agenda item is consider discuss act on 2023-13 for a public art project in the McElroy parking lot. You want to step up and discuss what the?
So, I don't know how much detail you want about that structure there. It is visible from the French Twist lot. And it goes from the intersection with Oklahoma to the property where the jail cells are, and it's in pretty bad shape, but it's part of our contract that it will be treated for rust and then prepped, then painted and then sealed. We have asked for the support of the town of Sykesville to mow in the near distance to it in order for the volunteer and the staff, the contractor that we will pay for it to be able to do their job safely. And so that's funded by the Carroll County Art Council, and we were trying to embellish this railroad with something that was on the theme of diversity. So we got a few mock-ups that are showing a river flowing, butterfly, flowers, music notes, and a rainbow, and we tried to incorporate in it the Get Psych logo. And the contractor that was selected through the process is Abby Dion, owner of the Poetry and Art Center.
What is the substrate for it?
It's the outside of the railroad guard.
Oh, okay. So it's just a metal railroad guard.
Yes.
Is that shown in the picture?
So
It's hard to zoom in.
it's hard to tell. I just want to, you have to zoom in. Do you see it now? It's inside the pink box.
Oh, that's really hard to see. So it's very narrow.
Yes, it's why it has to be something very flowing.
So you're only going to paint the backside then, visible to the parking lot.
Yeah, it would be too dangerous to put a bunch of volunteers on the other side to paint. It's to be visible from, where people are getting in and out of their vehicles.
So that's, how tall is that guardrail? 18 inches maybe? Like the actual structure itself?
I think you're right.
Okay. And so is this going to be, how's this going to be maintained in the future? So how's this, if it's being painted, I can see 5 years down from, it probably has a lot of sun exposure on it, UV. How are you going to maintain it?
So we have in our budget $1,500 to $3,000 of maintenance every year for each and every art exhibit we have on Main Street. This year we spent about $300 of it on one of the Snallygaster murals that needed a coat of sealant. So that money rolls over every year for future projects. We only had one, to be completely transparent and honest, mishap with our art project. It was when we were trying to do a sidewalk painting. That was the only, for transparency, I will own my mistake. The only place we could do it was on a town-owned property, and unfortunately, that's the only place that it was not resurfaced. So after a few effort maintaining, we realized that it would not be as beautiful as it was when it was done. So we abandoned that project. But after that, we learned to be very mindful of the maintenance part of our project. They're inspected yearly. The property manager are afterwards contacted, and when needed, we renew our insurance certificate of insurance with them.
Who owns that rail?
It's the towns.
It is the towns. It's not the state. It's not state-owned road.
No. That's all local road.
Okay. Good.
Do you have any idea when the last time it was replaced?
Oh yeah, no.
I mean, is it outlived its usefulness? I mean,
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's
Cornhead
still.
steel, so it's
Yeah,
probably,
I'm sure it's still functional. It's just.
it'd be very difficult to paint because it's the profile of it.
Mm-hmm. It's why it has to be something that's very flowing.
Yeah. Questions? And so the backside that faces the road, nothing's going to be done to that?
No.
Okay.
It would be too dangerous in my and also only visible by driver, which the other one speed.
I don't know, it just seems like it'd be easier to put some sort of board or some sort of substrate bolted onto that to paint it, in lieu of painting a substrate that's so curved and it's going to be so...
So your recommendation would be to add something to it?
I would just think it'd be easier for whoever's painting it to have a substrate that's flat.
I love the concept, but I don't know if is that something the town would consider, because it's adding, not like just using.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're sure you're adding to it, but it would make it probably easier to maintain.
Yeah, you could unbolt it, take it somewhere, repaint it on a flat surface. It'd be less labor intensive. You could even You can even do like dot matrix decals or something on that. If you
My thing would only be like, how would you attach it to the
It's post.
Yeah.
Span from post to post and bolt it through the post.
So you
There's
can do
probably like
sections.
what, 8-foot span between them?
So then what type of material would you recommend? Because then I don't want to get to the issue when it would be reflective after it's sealed.
No, you could do like deck boards, like a composite deck board or something, so it's more flat. Something that would hold up longevity that's not going to rot.
And then would you prefer that we keep the exact same height, or would you
Yeah.
want to, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it being closer to the ground on the hillside, if that helps, because I'm not sure how tall that guardrail is. It looks like there's about, I don't know, 10 inches to a foot below the bottom of the rail to the road.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
So I'm open to that. But I'm just thinking, to maintain something that curved in the profile is going to be hard to do. And I would probably like to see something easier to maintain in the future, and something that would be a little bit more aesthetically pleasing too, to be something that's seen on a flat substrate instead of something curved. But
Okay.
it's just a thought.
No, I like it. Any other suggestion to bring back to my committee? When we design those projects, we try to be as little invasive as we can to the existing structure, since we're asking for the use of it and we don't own it. But
So
if
that's
you
even
think-
better, because in the future then you could, if we decide that it's not being maintained, we can unbolt it and just take it away. And the rails would remain.
That's good.
Okay. Well, then I will take that back to my committee and submit again with a better plan.
You guys agree?
Just one question. If they paint that guardrail as it is, are they going to be standing on that bank to try to do it?
And on the grass side, yes.
On the parking lot side?
Yes. Yes, it's why we're not painting the other side.
They'll be able to do that without falling down and hurting themselves?
There was a site inspection and they didn't seem to worry about the slope or the space there.
Yeah. So that Chad's suggestion doesn't change your original vision, because it seemed like you were going to use the guardrail
Yes.
as a way to
Yes.
sort of do a repeating pattern, and
Yes.
sort of the guardrail would become
Yeah, the
the
guardrail was...
guardrail sort of wouldn't be,
The guardrail was... Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, there's sort of this symbiotic relationship between the art and the guardrail, and they kind of become one. That was the vision, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. The guardrail was directing the shape and the motif and the pattern.
Right.
It's why I say that I have to bring it back, because that means that we have to bid it out again.
Yeah, it sounds like a totally different.
The design would not look good on something flat. It was meant to be on something wavy.
That's what I.
I mean,
Do you want an answer on this motion, or do you want to take it back?
No, I think we can revisit and make sure that everyone is in agreement. And if the artist or the committee feel like the design has to be on something curvy,
Yeah.
I will come back and plead on it. And otherwise, we will take in account the suggestion to help
Yeah.
with maintenance.
Yeah, or come back with a little more. Chad, your concern was how's it going to look on the guardrail? How are you going to paint a
I
guardrail?
mean, just think about trying to paint some sort of graphic on something that's that curved and how morphed it's going to be, and it's just going to be very difficult to
Yeah.
achieve the look they're looking for. I mean, on a plan and a graphics, yeah, you can show it on a 2D screen and it looks, oh great, that's going to look good. But start wrapping that around an S-shaped guardrail, it's going to get distorted and plain, and it's going to be.
Just make sure you saw the design right.
I do.
Okay, because it's really a lot of.
Yeah, I get that. But I mean, the hill is also generating that because you're going up grade. And so I think you could still achieve that flow that you're looking for because it is transversing the grade, right? So it's still that free flowing effect that you're looking for. It's just not morphed around something, especially with lettering like you have shown right there. That would be very hard in context to read on something of that sort of profile as well.
Okay, we have a monthly meeting, so I'll bring that back to the group. We'll brainstorm and
Sure.
submit a new application.
What was the timing?
Say that
What
again?
was the timing that you were hoping to achieve? Like, was this supposed to be done before winter?
Yes,
Okay.
but that's okay. If it's, if if we want to have something that's beautiful and last, I'm not opposed to make the adjustment and modification you need for it.
When do you meet next?
We meet once a month, so it will be the second Tuesday in October.
Okay.
Is it paint or is it going to be like a wrap? Like what he was saying?
No, it's paint.
It's paint, so
Yeah.
people are going to actually be painting it.
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay. Like I'm not too worried about the timeline. We adapt all the time to
Okay.
just make it work. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing what you have. Okay. I guess the last item on the agenda this evening is to discuss the draft guidelines.
Do you want to go back to the hanging business sign?
Oh, yes. So we can approve that since he's not here. Can you bring that up? All right, so the third item on the agenda this evening is 2023-12 for hanging sign at 7540 Main Street. So have you guys had a chance to review the signage?
Yes.
Is there a, I didn't notice on here, is there a dimension from the sidewalk?
He provided it. It'll be 96 inches from the sidewalk and about 55 inches from the curb.
Okay, so that meets the guideline requirements. Go back to the picture of the sign. Online. I mean, it's our typical bracket they use over there. Any questions on the signs, lettering, scale, context?
He's still deciding between black and white, it sounds like, so we'd say either one was okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're not privy to color, so
Right.
I prefer black. I think it'd read easier. But it's not up to us. Any questions, comments? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve signage at 7540 Main Street for Cape Pearl Tea Room as shown in the application.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Back to the agenda, discussion on draft guidelines.
Yes, so we are probably about 95% to completion on the draft guidelines now. There's a couple things that I know Kevin has sent to the consultants. He's talked to them about the contributing, non-contributing buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We are working on getting pictures of each of the buildings as they currently are. And we're actually working with the gatehouse to incorporate some older pictures as well, so that way we can see the history and the current time. There are a couple things that we want some guidance from you on, how you want to move forward, namely the window paintings. Do you want to stick with the percentage? Do you want to increase the percentage? Do you want that to be admin approval, or do you want it to come before you?
Well,
So
I
these
think-
are the temporary ones.
Yeah, and I think, with the window paintings, a lot of the regulations that are in the guidelines now are related to commercial signage. I mean, that was the intent behind all of that. Well, when you do something decorative that's, coordinated between a bunch of merchants, those are things that I think the community does enjoy. We want to see that. But we do want to make sure that there's at least some parameters on it so that we don't feel like we're getting run over.
And a duration, right? So do you
Right.
usually assign a duration, just can stay up for 14 days or whatever?
Like temporary signage has a duration, but I think even temporary signage in our zoning ordinance is 6 months or less. So this is a matter of, how much leeway do we want to give? We could follow what's in the current zoning ordinance and say, okay, as long as it doesn't stay up for longer than 6 months, then that's considered temporary. And as long as it doesn't cover a certain percentage of the window, because again, you want to be able to make sure that people can still see in and there's still activity in the windows, because that's kind of one of the main things of a main street. But we also didn't want to limit it so much that you can't get the effect that's out there now.
Yeah. I don't know what you guys think. Brian, do you have a thought on this? leaving it up to staffing is appropriate. And I think that if there is a question from staffing, that they could bring it up to the Historic District Commission, so there should be a caveat to that. So if there's a question of some significant side for AIDS, let's say, or something, AIDS Awareness Month, and it's too large or whatever, they can come to the HDC and then bring it to us.
Okay.
So I think in that general consensus, I think we're comfortable with that.
And with keeping
Keep it.
everything else that's in the guidelines
Yeah.
currently.
But is that like
So
window
that's-
coverage?
That's 10% for temporary signs. 10% of the window.
But again, that's for commercial signage. And again,
That's
I
for
think-
commercial.
yeah. So for like something decorative that's out there, are we keeping with that same percentage? Because that's going to reduce significantly what can happen on those windows.
No, I would, like I said, I would leave that up to staff. So
Okay.
I would say I would not exceed a certain percentage. We should set some sort of top end of
Yeah.
that percentage and say, you can't do 97% of the window.
Yeah.
So
And again, I don't
within
know,
reason.
and again, maybe that's something we can work with the DSC on to make sure that, and again, I don't want to say a percentage off the top of my head because, that could be wrong, but if you're covering up more than 50% of the window
Yeah.
or something along those lines, that maybe we can just work on the design or something like that.
okay? I know it's not procedural.
Well, but you're a stakeholder in the DSC, so.
And we're the one.
Can you come to the podium? Sorry.
We're the one coordinating those initiatives. So as we speak, the last painting are being done for Breast Cancer Awareness Month.
Mhm.
And I understand when you say that you would want to have a suggestion for the size of the windows that are being occupied, but when you compare the window of the local motif, for instance, we're talking, I don't know how many feet by many feet, from this country, it's a measurement. Huge window. And then you look at Revive and Company that only has those 2-panel windows. To make a statement with 10% of a 2-panel windows, when you're trying to express a heartfelt message into a campaign that is all about connection.
That's why I think it's up to staff.
Yeah.
So if the staff comes in and says Revive Company is going to take 85% of their windows, given its square footage of the windows, but then Locomotion is going to be 40%.
Okay.
It's larger in scale because of the proportion of the window size and relevance to the graphic.
So we can even put language in the guidelines that kind of point to that, to say, it'll be left up to staff interpretation on overall aesthetic of the entire Main Street.
Yeah.
And, if there's any question or if there's any, let's just say there's any appeal to that, it would have to come back to the HDC.
Yes.
Okay. We
and,
can do that.
and for sure the purpose is also something that probably cannot be regulated or put in writing, but also just to talk about the lengths of those paintings. They have a life on their own. They won't last, it's a 1-month initiative. I know that for Pride Month it took a little longer to take off. It's just because we were working out the details of the painter coming back and helping people that had difficulty removing it. But I think it just makes sense for them to have the bank that we hope they will have to not stay indefinitely anyways.
Sure, yeah. And you don't want to deteriorate and look like,
Absolutely. It's a statement, and people would become colorblind to it if it was there all the
Yeah,
time.
I agree.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, what are the other issues that we need?
In a same sort of thread, A-frame signs and street furniture. So Kevin said we could either have this in the guidelines or we could say something like defer to the zoning code for size limitations and street clearance.
We didn't want to leave something in the guidelines that we didn't feel like was purposeful in coming before the HDC. I mean, if we want to keep control over the type of furniture that's out on the sidewalk, then by all means we can leave it in there. But we at least wanted to have that discussion. And again, with signage, there's going to be an extensive section regarding signage within the zoning ordinance, but what it won't do in the zoning is talk about materials or things like that. So again, if we want to keep the purview in front of the Historic District Commission, then great, but we at least wanted to have the conversation to make sure that is something you want purview over.
I think we want a cohesive look of furniture in the town, and we don't want to get in a way where everybody has a different sort of style of furniture and whatever goes.
Yep.
So I think we want to have oversight on that.
Okay.
In those areas.
Perfect. And it might be something too that we can actually work with, not to keep bringing up the DSC, but maybe the design committee or something like that. We could all get together and actually come up with a standard for street furniture that says something that's uniform. But again, I don't know if all the merchants would even want that. So, but again, at least it's a conversation that we can have.
I think it should be a conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that like we'd have to revisit that every 5 years or something because styles change and
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. So
Next up, we have trees, and if we want to keep anything in there about trees, if we want to keep the same, I think it's 12 inches in caliper, if we want to increase that to whatever.
I think, did we agree that the caliber was fine? I think we wanted to add a clause that if it's an emergency situation, that it shouldn't have be purview of HDC, it should be up to staff.
Like a safety concern?
Like a
if
safety
it was-
concern.
So that's how we've been doing it, just kind of right in that part.
And all you do is notify us that
Yes.
staff report, there was a tree taken
Yep.
down, there was a safety concern.
We just wanted to make sure you didn't want that for all trees moving forward, not just emergent ones.
No, I would say we leave it the same at the caliber.
Okay, easy enough.
Is dead trees covered on that? Do they have to come through the HTC through dead trees?
Well, so if it's not posing an immediate or like an emergency type situation, then yeah, it would have to follow the guidelines.
Because I think part of our guidelines is that an arborist has to go out and evaluate the tree to make sure that it's alive, dead, or can be treated. So if anybody came in and said, my tree's dead, it may not be dead, it could just be treated or something. So I think we need an oversight on that as well.
Okay.
And the last is the string lighting in the windows.
Before we do the string lighting,
Yes.
what about the map? Because that was a big item on there, that there was a lot of historic structures that were not noted correctly on there, on that map. And they had came back to us and said that it was going to be up to the town to just distinguish which ones are his. So has that process started?
Yes, so Kevin has met with members of the Historical Trust, and he's actually gone through with them, and I think they found a couple that were marked incorrectly. The majority of the main structures were correct in contributing, non-contributing. Some of the outbuildings, for lack of a better term, were reclassified as non-contributing. I know he looked into some years for some of the buildings when they were built, things like that. I know the church was one of them over here on Main Street that got reclassified to contributing. But yes, he's dug deep into that with MHT.
Is that a live document in the future that we can make changes to for that map?
In the
Or would we
future,
have to go
how
back
far?
and resubmit the whole historic district guidelines for that map?
So we could change up the map itself. It's just to make changes would be an ordinance through the council, right?
Yeah, once it's adopted, then any change to it would have to follow the same adoption process.
Well, I'm just thinking, if there's, let's say, 2 years from now, there's 4 buildings that change in status for some reason, and we want to track those 4 buildings, and we're like, okay, it makes sense, there's 4 or 5 buildings that change now. Maybe we should come and have them changed on the map, right? Because you don't want to get it too far down the road, and it's like all these buildings aren't labeled correctly. So
And
if we could just
hopefully-
track those changes and then report back to you guys.
And hopefully, once we get the new document in place, we can have discussions every 3 years, every 5 years. Hey, is this still working for you? Is there anything in this that we need to change?
Okay.
That way we don't get into this situation where it's, 25 years since we've created something and it's all out of date.
It's just too long.
Yes.
Okay, string lights. We all love them.
Well, I guess, do we want to make sure there's a distinction between lights maybe that outline a window and holiday lights that people are stringing along?
Well,
Or is that getting too much in the
I
weeds?
think it's too much in the weeds because the guidelines have been very loose on the lighting for that aspect, and so people have taken advantage of that.
Right.
Started off putting Christmas lights in, and then everybody has lights in their windows, and they're different Kelvin temperatures, different color strands, different, and it's just you drive down Main Street and it's all different, and I think it's not cohesive any longer, and that's the problem we're having. So the guidelines say that interior lighting is supposed to be illuminated in the storefront windows. That is extra illumination of the windows by the string lights. And so I think obviously we're going to allow Christmas lights to be added at some time, but there has to be some sort of stipulation there that says Christmas lights can be installed from this date to this date. After these dates, string lights are not allowed in the windows unless we decide this evening that there are some sort of string lights that are approved. I don't know.
Chad, I don't know if you all can hear me now.
We do.
So, funny enough, I was downtown over the summer, one of the festivals, and there was a lot of chit chat among the business owners about that particular issue, and they were not very happy about the idea of limitations on it. I'm not sure that that sways necessarily one way or the other. I'm just letting everyone know the business owners seem to really not like the idea of additional our on that. I had a couple of them come up to me specifically and call that out after our original meeting discussing these.
So, I mean, it has a triple effect. There's, like we had talked before about neon lights, backlit lights, all other sort of light fixtures. I understand what you're saying, Brian. People want to use the string lights to bring attention to the businesses and illuminate their windows, but I think we have to have some sort of consistency in what is being used so that, one business owner who doesn't have electrical outlet, who can't put string lights up, or who's wiring a dangerous situation to add string lights to the front of their windows is putting their building in jeopardy or something of that nature. So it's a
Is it a color issue, or is that just a piece of it?
It's a piece.
Okay.
It's quantity, color. It's different strand. So some of them are green, some of them are white.
Right.
The strands themselves. And
Some of them can change. Like I know
some can change.
Like
During the day, you have white strands in the windows.
Yeah.
So it's like.
Might this be like a good merchant conversation, or is it? Well, we can try to bridge a gap, or is it, no, we just want to try to make a regulation?
Yeah, my question is, when we talk about this holiday.
Remember, you're still in punishment for being late.
No, I'll never be late again. It's a definition. First, there is the aesthetical component of it.
Yeah.
You drive through Main Street now, on Main Street, there are things that could be considered holiday light. They look fantastic. And also, what is a holiday light? There's some samsara. I'm going to use example because I'm sorry, I have a visual in my head. Samsara, they have those little strings that are going like that through their window. There's not really any other light in that section of Main Street. It's across from the distillery. It's in between two lights. So there's a sense of safety aspect to that to me. I know that walking there now has a little glow. It's not completely dark. And it looks beautiful, and
You talk about when the business is closed?
Yes, yeah. And so there are a few in that section there. There's a big light that is in between the cars and between the entrance of what was Sykesville Station and Baldwin Drive. There's a giant pole right there that creates a ton of light. The next one is going to be at the intersection between Sandusky and Main Street, and also create some kind of a halo. It's not the same type of light, probably was not put in at the same time, but without those embellishment light before, it was a dead.
Yeah.
So there is an aesthetical part, there is a sense of safety, there is the atmosphere that they create.
Yeah.
So it is a lot of, it's a difficult conversation.
They're articulating winter lights that are icicles that are being used now when it's not even.
Oh yeah, so I think they could be very easy. No, like if there's some things that twinkle green, red, and white, like that. it's easy to classify. For the other ones that are really, and there's an entire seminar that I took as a National Main Street program that touched on how you bring light to a main street to enhance the sense of belonging and that community feeling. So we could also completely envision bringing a consultant to help with that on some grant funds and have a wider discussion. But I think that trying to classify holiday light and not holiday light without doing case by case because of where it is on Main Street and the light context in there is going to be very complicated and might brush people the wrong way.
So isn't headmasters like pink or red or something in their windows?
They did have some colors for St. Patrick's Day, for instance.
It changes, yeah.
Yeah. So
It changes with the season.
So that's the thing. We don't want a hodgepodge of ownership in the historic
So
district. Where
that's a conversation that we could
so I
completely
think it
have.
would be a
and-
good conversation piece to have the business owners and ask them, poll them, and say, "Listen, we're considering initiating some sort of guideline. We want to talk to you prior to
Yep.
this.
Yeah.
We understand your need for safety, lighting,
Yep.
warmth. Bring attention to your businesses, but we want a consistency throughout all the businesses. Is there some sort of compromise that we can come to that everybody would agree upon that would unify the look?"
Yeah.
I would
I think
gladly
that's-
try
yeah.
to talk to the National Main Street program to have one of those consultants coming and helping us with that.
Yeah.
I think that's a
Is
good
this
idea.
something where we could look, like the signage, the permanent signage on windows, where there's a certain amount or number of lights allowed per a square foot or square inch of window? That way, it's something of a cap on it, I guess, where it's not going to be over the top. Yeah.
Business groups is like, what's the size, what's the quantity, and we can get into the same thing of, Locomotion has a large window and they have more glass.
Right.
And then you get into, somebody else, Reviving Company, where they have small windows trying to bring attention to their. So it's like, it's gonna be a difficult situation.
I think there are people that's their line of work, and I think also we're not specialists in that. There's a question of lumen, the type of light, if it's direct, indirect. Like there's so many different
Kelvin,
components to take in account with bulbs that are evolved and sources that are evolved that we probably can take some suggestion from a professional in the matter.
And I think we want. I'm not a light expert, but I deal with them all the time, and I think we want a softer hue, not so destructive as a bright white light that has a large glare factor on it. Like we're talking about, no shiny materials when it comes to like gutters and stuff of that nature. That should apply to the light fixtures as well.
I agree. And again, but I think now's the time, since we're going through the entire guideline booklet. It's like, well, let's have some of these conversations that we don't want to adopt a guideline and then still run into the same issues that we're running into now.
I agree.
But again, I think having a conversation with the merchants, or we can funnel it through the DSC one way or another, is a.
And I think
is a
they
good
appreciate
step.
that too, right?
Absolutely.
I don't want to make a decision without involving the merchants.
Right.
So,
The power of talking.
Good.
Thank you.
what else you have?
That is all I have. So we will take what we decided tonight. We'll send that to the consultants to get that put in. Joe and I will work with Julie and the merchants and on the string lights thing. And hopefully we'll be back with a 99.67% completed version for you all shortly.
That's good. That's great. Okay. Any other staff updates or anything?
I have just a couple for y'all. So there is an MHT virtual learning session about their tax credits coming up on Tuesday. If anybody's interested, I can send you the link for it. It's held by Montgomery County, so there's going to be a little bit about Montgomery County's program in there as well, but they're trying to focus more on the state aspect. I know we touched on that with our guidelines, so I figured that might be something interesting to learn about. That's Tuesday the 3rd.
Is it evening or daytime?
7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay.
And
Yeah,
it's
Sunday.
virtual.
Okay.
Yep. The Gatehouse Museum is having more Warfield tours. They are full, booked up all the way through. They had 150 slots that are fully full, but they do have a wait list. So if you're interested, we can get you on the wait list. And maybe put a little oomph behind your name, see if we can get you on it.
I think we have a little clout.
So if you're interested in that, give me an email as well, and I'll get you added to that. Also, Gatehouse-wise, Adrian, our curator over there, is working on creating a video with some MHT folks about the differences between the MHT and our local historic district, and she's interested in interviewing a couple of you all for the video. So if you are interested, before we volunteer somebody to get interviewed.
Mike's
volunteered.
I'm really bringing this through now.
I think she was
She was
looking.
looking at you.
So wait, who's not here tonight? So they get volunteered for the video.
That's true. Yeah, other Mike and Richard.
Yeah.
So we'll tell them.
I think they're perfect for the video.
She was looking, I think, later in fall for that. So I will. I'll follow up, see if we can get some questions that she wants answered, and see if one of you all would fit best in this role.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Let's adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Keep post.